Right off the bat, I want to be clear about just a few things. First of all, sorry I haven't uploaded a video in a while, holidays, etc. Thing two, my dog is snoring in the background so loud that I can hear it on the microphone. I apologize. Thing three, I just wanted to be clear about on this video is I don't know a ton about George C. Scott's personal life, and maybe the guy really was, like, awful. Honestly, a lot of the reason why people wanted me to start a channel was so that I could tape some of these rants that I go on sometimes, and I think I've shared this particular story now with like 4 or 5 different people in my life, and I was like, instead of just spamming everyone I know, why don't I spam the world instead? The long form video that I'm working on is about the film Rescuers Down Under, and one of the biggest reasons that I got caught up while I was trying to do this video was that I needed a clip of George C. Scott from the movie Firestarter, and I couldn't find it. And this sent me down a rabbit hole of George C. Scott material. The point of this video is to talk about the obituary that I found. I had to share it with everybody I knew. It's less of an obituary and more of a hit piece. Let's dive in. Already from the top, we got this great headline: "Rage on Tap fueled George C. Scott's memorable act." I was intrigued. I was curious. I thought I was gonna learn something about George C. Scott from reading this, honestly, that I didn't know. Nobody exploded better. When George C. Scott detonated, the rafters shivered, the screen shook, the dust and feathers flew, and strong men ducked for cover. No wonder he made such a wonderful general. He was a human bomb. The actor who died Wednesday at 71 of an abdominal aneurysm, left a legacy of extraordinary performances, but it was the propulsion of his rage that drove the best of them. Scott's rage lurked behind smart, dark eyes and a massive body that seemed to reek of strength. Have you ever told anyone that they reek of strength? Maybe after they went to the gym and then they punched you in the face? He had a haggard, beautifully bashed face that was muscular and grizzled at once, and wore its busted nose like a badge of honor. This guy seems to really just low-key think that George C. Scott was the ugliest man to have ever lived. Right here is the first sign to me that the man who wrote this obituary, which we'll get into that, hasn't actually ever seen any of George C. Scott's films. It's just it's a theory. I don't even think he's seen Patton. I don't think he saw Patton. Think of him as the coiled gambler Burt Gordon in his first great screen role. He's a spider king, a monster with a human. This time the rage comes without buildup. It simply bursts forth from him as a force of nature. That is, a force of his nature. And most memorably, it came when Tim Considine's frightened GI begins to weep about the shells, the noise, and the machine gun fire in Patton. Why, you're nothing but a damn coward. Look, I think we've all seen that scene, yes, so, okay, maybe he saw Patton, but I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. That is probably one of the best rage George C. Scott scenes ever filmed, so 1 point for you, sir. The rage was evidently real. It certainly was evident in 2 of his most famous off-screen imbroglios: his refusal to accept the Best Actor Academy Award for Patton in 1971, he called the Oscars a meat parade, and watched a hockey game in his upstate New York farmhouse during the telecast. I don't know where rage comes from in the whole he didn't want to be part of the Oscars. He just didn't want to be pitted against other actors. He just didn't think it was the right thing to do. I don't know where rage came in. Maybe there's like some interview, but I couldn't find one. Honestly, I tried. I looked. Somebody show me one if there is one, please. He seemed forever in search of peace and forever unable to find it. Not the last angry man, but the eternally angry man. Where's this guy getting this stuff? There's nothing here backing up what he's saying. He just keeps writing over and over and over again. George C. Scott was mad, yo. There's nothing to back it up. We're gonna get into the biography part of every obituary.
He was born in Wise, Virginia in 1927 and served in the Marine Corps for 4 years, beginning in 1945. After a brief flirtation with journalism at the University of Missouri, he turned to the stage and spent the 50s slowly working his way up the ladder.
These can't have been easy times. He was married twice and got his nose broken 5 times, reportedly in bar fights. It was too much work for this man to find out how he got those 5 broken noses. It was too much work to find out why he was married twice. We must just assume these can't have been easy times. This man is a journalist. He has access to archives. This is stuff, I mean, like, I can source this information. Let's see. George C. Scott. Alcoholism. Here, look. Oh, look. A TampaBay.com article from 1997. Oh, it's an interview with him where he talks about when he was young and his alcoholism and the fights that he got in. I've seen microfiche, whatever. I've seen it in movies. I know that a journalist would have had access to it. I thought I muted my computer. He arrived in New York in the immediate wake of Brando and The Method, where his intensity and intelligence and his lack of pretty boy... where his intensity and intelligence made up for his lack of pretty boy looks. Jesus. But even as he was succeeding, he was becoming angrier. After denouncing the Motion Picture Academy in 1971 and the next year refusing to accept an Emmy for a television performance, he began the cruel slide from stardom. But there were also terrible movies, like the horror. I can't even say it. It's so offensive to the eye and to the mind. Like horror schlockers, The Changeling, and Firestarter. Say what you want about Firestarter, but the worst thing you could ever say about The Changeling is that it's boring. If gothic British horror isn't for you, fine. I don't even know if The Changeling is actually British. It just feels very British to me. But schlocker? This movie wasn't hated when it came out. Roger Ebert didn't love it. He has some legitimate good criticisms of the movie. He doesn't think it goes far enough. He wanted it to do more. That's fine. Like I said, it's a little bit of a boring movie. I hate that this man was able to write George C. Scott's obituary. The obituary that was like in all the papers. You see, the LA Times picked it up. It was from WAPA, but this is the LA Times archival version of it. Flames on the side of my face, seething, breathing. You know the quote. Okay, anyway. After that last one in 1984, he left the movies, at least until 1993's Malice and this year's Gloria, and concentrated on a distinguished but smaller scaled and presumably less compromised and more satisfying television and theater career. This part is, this is just factually inaccurate. I guess he could have said he mostly left the big screen. He's in, Exorcist. No, he was in Exorcist 3, which is one of his best performances. Obviously, he's in The Rescuers Down Under, which is a theatrically released film. That's a whole thing. It was a theatrically released Disney sequel. Plus, if he had included The Exorcist, he could have had a lot more to say about his rage. I want you to see The Fish Story.
Can't go home. Why? The carp.
I thought you said.
My wife's mother is visiting, Father. And Tuesday night she's cooking us a carp. It's a tasty fish. I have nothing against it. But because it's supposedly filled with impurities, she buys it live. And for 3 days it's been swimming up and down in my bathtub. Up and down. And I hate it. I can't stand the sight of it. Moving its gills. Now, you're standing very close to me, Father. Have you noticed? Yes. I haven't had a bath for 3 days. I can't go home until the carp is asleep. Because if I see it swimming, I'll kill it.
I was so enthralled with that scene because I didn't know where he was going with it. It's an Exorcist movie, and then it kind of had like that funny ending, but I was like a little like heart racing. This guy even sleeps on his made-for-TV movies. If you haven't seen George C. Scott's Christmas Carol, please do. It's a little late to recommend it in January, but just put it on the calendar, set a reminder. Oh, and then as late as 1996, he was on the boards in Inherit the Wind. Yes, he was. He was in the theatrical productions of Inherit the Wind. He was also in the made-for-TV movie of Inherit the Wind. Look, it's a TV movie that has an MGM movie time poster, you know, if you know VHS tapes, this was very important. This is like a seal of approval here, okay? Just trust me, this is legit stuff right here. Consider one of his best roles. Did he mention it? No, he didn't. All right, anyway, moving on. Was he ever happy? I can testify that once, yes, he was happy. He was touring in a play that brought him to Baltimore in the early 1970s. He was heavily wrapped against the Chesapeake's bitter winds, and he had a magnificent Irish setter with him on the end of a leash. Otherwise, he was alone. Man, dog, water, nature, a sharp northern wind. I saw a look on his face that I never saw on any screen. His face was at utter repose. He looked completely at peace, without another human being within 100 feet. The end. That's it. That's... This guy in 1970 saw George C. Scott for 2 seconds with his dog at a traffic light and has decided that in that moment, George C. Scott was happy. You know, maybe if he had ever seen the poster for Inherit the Wind, maybe he could have seen a look of utter repose on George C. Scott's face, or any interview with him. Like, I don't know, like, you know, let's go to the tape again, shall we?
You say blank verse, I always thought, you know, it's a bunch of Greeks running around in burlap and bare feet and pulling each other's eyes out. You know, it's terrible. Long speeches. This is love. You don't even have to watch. Just listen. But we got to do it like the Mighty Carson Art players. You see, right. I got a part for you and a part. You don't do anything. Just sit. Right. Ed is a beautiful young woman who has been accused of being a witch, erroneously, of course, because she's innocent, and she's going to be burned at the stake. And you, John, play the mayor of the town, who's also naturally the town magistrate, who's condemned her to death. Oily, unctuous, mean, cruel, venal, corrupt. Perfect part, John.
Oh, thank you.
And I play a guy who walks in off the street, sort of a street bum, also typecasting, and he concentrate on me. That's it.
I like that.
Nice.
What an angry, miserable man. After the third or fourth time I read this article, I'm sorry, I've read this article so many times. I have problems. I noticed something. I noticed a little something. He was heavily wrapped against the Chesapeake's bitter winter winds. This was only in a fleeting moment between the shock of my initial recognition and the next. 1970. This was 29 years ago. Without another human being within 100 feet. What if this guy never even saw George C. Scott? He saw nothing. And he wrote an entire obituary about it. And here's the thing. If you wanted to point some fingers at George C. Scott and mention some issues that George C. Scott had, you didn't have to look far. Again, AP article. George C. Scott was accused of sexual harassment in a $3.1 million lawsuit. I also love that as many times as he mentioned Dr. Strangelove, he never actually mentioned the onset arguments that he was having with Stanley Kubrick about the film. But hey, you know, what's research? The guy who wrote this article, because I definitely decided that I was going to see to it that the world knew that he's a hack obituary writer. I thought he was going to be nobody, but it turns out Stephen Hunter is the writer of the book that turned into
Shooter.
And he is actually a little bit of a controversial figure himself. And by the time I was done reading this wiki article, I had decided that I hate Stephen Hunter an awful lot more than I hate George C. Scott. So, yeah. Go screw yourself, dude. Go screw yourself. I'm never gonna see
Shooter.
I mean, I can already I could tell, like, you don't write books I would have liked anyways, but now I specifically don't like them because of you and your crap obituary that you wrote. So, I won't do this because my mom watches my videos. See ya!